This week, Israeli Jews entered Palestinian Arab towns in Judea and Samaria, and you could say they barely escaped with their lives.
But this is discrimination against Jews at its highest levels, meaning there's terror factions. Sole purpose is to kill Jews inside these Arab areas.
There's been a lot of instances where Jews have wandered into Palestinian Arab areas, and they've ended up being brutally murdered.
There's one safe haven for Jews, and that is Israel. And even inside of the state of Israel, there are places where people desire, their life's goal is to kill the Jewish people.
Hello and welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Luke Hilton here with Joshua Waller in the heartland of Israel on the Mount of Blessing. And if you follow Israeli news, you might have seen that a little bit, what would you say, tumultuous coming out of these areas in the last couple of weeks. Yes, we're right in the middle of it. We've had firsthand, I guess you could say, knowledge and reporting of what's going on. If you watched our channel, we've tried to keep track of everything happening, but terrorist attacks, anti-terrorism operations by the IDF, protests, and lots of things like that happening. Make sure you subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our content. And Episode 6 of the Temple Mount series is dropping this Sunday. So we got a couple more days, and the very last episode will be dropping on YouTube. If you haven't checked out episodes 1 through 5, make sure you go do that. They are going absolutely viral. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of views. Fascinating topic, and we're so excited to get it out there. So, Israel, the nation that you could say is discriminating against their own people. Let me explain. Okay, everybody's heard of the Oslo Accords. Everybody's heard of Area A, B, and C. Just quickly, in case you haven't or you're not sure what I'm talking about, let's break it down. Area C in Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, or what some of the world calls the West Bank or occupied territories, is usually not all of Area C, but Jewish communities. A lot of people call them settlements. Inside Area C are usually fenced, and they're secured from intruders. This is to stop terrorist attacks, such as when the Fogel family was murdered in 2011, when a 16 and 17-year-old Palestinian Arabs climbed the fence of the Jewish community of Itamar, walked into his family's home, and murdered 5 members of the family, both parents, 3 of the children, including the very small baby. Even so, most of the Jewish communities in these areas, including the one that we're a part of, which is Har Bracha, Mount of Blessing, right behind me here in the studio, Palestinian Arabs, they enter Jewish communities on a daily basis to work in construction or to work in other jobs. And if a Palestinian Arab entered a Jewish community by accident, which probably wouldn't happen because they're gated communities, they would be quickly apprehended by security forces, and they would be arrested, or they would be brought out of the community because they shouldn't be there. But in general, you could say that they don't have to fear for their life if somehow they wandered into a Jewish community. On the contrary, they usually try to sneak into communities so that they can commit acts of terror. So it's flipped. Now, on the other hand, Area A inside Judea and Samaria, the green line, Palestinian Arab areas under Israeli law and the Oslo Accords, Israeli citizens are prohibited from entering. There's actually these massive red signs, which we'll show on the screen, that say, under Israeli law, you are not allowed to enter this area because it leads to an Area A. And when Jews or Israeli Jews accidentally enter these places, most of the time, they're surrounded by an Arab mob and in general have to fear for their life. And indeed, there's been a lot of instances where Jews have wandered into Palestinian Arab areas and they've ended up being brutally murdered. Now, today's stories that we're going to tell you, the endings were good, but it hasn't always been this way. And even the Israeli security when Jews have wandered into Arab areas, Area A, sometimes the Palestinian Authority security forces have either looked on in silence or they've assisted in actually murdering Jews that have wandered into these areas. And thankfully today, the PA security forces did the right thing, apprehended the Jews that wandered in these areas and turned them over to the IDF, and no one was injured or killed. But you're going to want to stay tuned to the end to hear both of these stories, and they both happened over Yom Kippur.
Luke, I want to talk about one thing before we dive into the stories, and that is that in the world today we have 22 Arab countries. We have 50 Muslim majority countries throughout the world, which means there's plenty of room, and most of these are completely Judenrein. I mean, there's no Jews allowed in these countries typically. But yet there's one Jewish state. Literally, we have one Jewish sovereign state of Israel. And yet, even in this state of Israel, there is areas where Jews cannot go. To me, that is hurtful, painful. This is really just unacceptable fact that lies on the table here in Israel. There's places where if you're unfamiliar with the roads, as the stories we're about to tell, you could end up and it could cost you your life. Now, I understand that that's that way. A lot of places in the world, there's bad neighborhoods. But this is discrimination against Jews at its highest levels, meaning there's terror factions. Sole purpose is to kill Jews inside these Arab areas. And yet, in Israel, the one and only Jewish state, the only one and only safe haven for Jews in the world, as anti-Semitism is on a rise around the world, there's one safe haven for Jews, and that is Israel. And even inside of the state of Israel, there are places where people desire, their life's goal is to kill the Jewish people. So even in the state of Israel, Jews are at danger for their lives in these areas. To me, Israel needs to be a safe place, and to me, as one from the nations, a non-Jew, I'm begging that the nation of Israel be a safe place for all Jews to live securely without the threat of making a wrong turn into an Arab neighborhood, and that could cost them their lives. Now, to me, this is incredibly sad that the fact lies on the ground that this is just a fact in Israel's neighborhoods and areas. There are areas that if Jews go, they most likely will be killed. Now, with that being said, I would like to push that all nations around the world would support Israel to be a strong nation in their own land. To be strong, the only reason why Israel doesn't act more severely against these enemies of Israel is because extreme pressure from around the world to pressure Israel to be lax toward these enemies. We have even now the United States. We just reported on a few weeks ago trying to lesser Israel's response towards terrorism. Now, all of all of this is insane and should not. In any way, we should not be pressuring Israel to lax its standard against Islamic jihad and terrorism that threatens the people of Israel. So again, we have one Jewish state, and it needs to be a strong Jewish state that does not have these threats of terror. This is, I'm very passionate about this, and we want all of you guys, if you're with us with this, let's stand up for Israel. Israel needs to be strong in its borders, and there needs to be no place where you can make a bad turn and end up in a life-threatening situation. Now, to the stories we will tell. Luke, let's give it to him.
So one happened just hours before Yom Kippur started, and the other one happened just hours after Yom Kippur ended. And if you don't know, Yom Kippur was yesterday here in the land of Israel, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year for the Jewish people. And in the land of Israel, I think I saw 70% of Israel, not just religious Israel, but all of Israel, secular, traditional, religious, ultra-Orthodox, all of them, 70% actually fast on Yom Kippur. So the holiest day of the year. 2 Jewish women and their 2 children entered the Palestinian Arab town of Nablus just a few hours before the start of Yom Kippur. Now, it's kind of unclear whether or not they accidentally ended up there or whether they thought that somehow, because there are reports that they went with a Palestinian Arab friend of theirs to go shopping, which sounds really wild to me because like Jewish women and their children don't just drive into Nablus, okay? Like it sounds really weird. So we're not sure if that's true, but they were in the heart of the city in the Kasbah, which we've both been there because we're Americans and we can do that. But after making it to the market, the Kasbah is the market in the heart of the city, they ended up being surrounded by a mob. There is a report, according to Ynet here in Israel, the group was first stopped by the Lion's Den organization while in the heart of Nablus. Now, the Lion's Den is a terrorist organization that has been mostly, a lot of the terrorist news and violence coming out of Israel lately has begun because of the Lion's Den organization. They're Palestinian Arab terrorist group here, and I think they're based out of Nablus, committing a lot of acts of terror, but they found them first, and thankfully they turned them over to the PA security forces, and thankfully the PA security turned them over to the IDF. But in a statement translated and published by Ynet, the Lion's Den terrorist group said, quote, "We apply the words of our prophet Mohammed, and that we do not kill children and women for the sake of their children, and in applying God's word, they were handed over to the proper authorities. So thankfully, this incident, it was kind of a wild rescue. They came in, the PA got them, and like I said, in the past, the PA has been a part of terrorist attacks, supported them, or looked on in silence. So thankfully, this time they chose to do the right thing, maybe because of politics, who knows for what reasons, but they turned them over to the IDF. They had a Palestinian tow truck that took their car out. It was kind of a wild deal, but thankfully, they were able to be pulled out, and they'll be being questioned by Israel to find out exactly what were they doing and how they ended up in Nablus, or biblical Shechem. That's actually just at the bottom of the mountain where we're sitting right now.
You know what I find fascinating is that this kind of stuff has not happened. Like, people don't make wrong turns. There's these huge red signs, as mentioned before, that do not enter these areas. It's dangerous for your lives. It's illegal. It's according to Israeli law. You're not allowed in these zones. And by the way, as we're on this, there's these big signs that say no Jews allowed. You will not find a sign anywhere in Israel that says no Arabs allowed. Sorry, not there. I know the world is trying to make you think that Israel is some sort of apartheid regime that is occupying this Arab territory. No, absolutely not. False, ridiculous content that you should never be listened to. That is not happening here. There is no sign that says no Arabs allowed. Nowhere, not anywhere in Israel. And even beyond that, as Luke mentioned before, these Jewish towns called settlements inside Judea and Samaria, even them, most all of them, have Arab workers that work constantly inside their towns. Now, on the contrary, if a Jew was to go through these into one of these Arab towns, literally it is life-threatening. There's no Jews working in Arab towns. They are not. It's a life-threatening situation. Like an Arab can work in a Jewish town, and it happens like that's the workforce many times in Israel. It does not translate the other way around. Now, this other incident is kind of a shocking one. Just after Yom Kippur ended last night, I've got an alert, an undercover, quick alert on my phone. I recognized the car on the alert. I said, what in the world? A friend of mine has now made a wrong turn and is in Hebron, of all places. I quickly called the friend. Incidentally, has two company cars, and it happened to be a friend of that worked in the company, not my friend, but his coworker. And he made a wrong turn into Hebron with 3 Israelis and 8 tourists that were there. So immediately was very concerned for their safety. Thank God. Again, the PA police apprehended them. Reports say the terrorist also got there first, but then handed them over to the PA. Again, what is this? The PA acting like the good guy. They've never acted like the good guy. I mean, we have a few stories of them potentially trying to do political maneuvers, but literally this is the Fatah arm of the PA. This many times this is who deals with things like this. So the Fatah is just no more than another terror organization. So what are they doing acting like the good guy? Well, right now they're trying to cozy up to America, and that's for sure. We have a very weak Israeli government, and they need to be seen as moderates, not as fighters. And so they're going to act like the good guy and trying to bring, and thank God they're acting like the good guy. This saved now, in the teens of lives here, have been saved now because of the PA being good, acting good. This does not mean they're good. They're a very hostile to Israel group of folks, but thank God these that have entered these Arab areas have been saved by the PA and handed back into Israel's care.
And it could be because they, like, you have the Lion's Den terrorist organization, you have the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, and the PA security, they want to make themselves look better than the actual, the terrorists that are committing acts of terror on a daily basis, and also because they want to boost their international image.
Right.
But yeah, like you said, thank God, because 15 years ago, 20 years ago, those times, and the Second Intifada, the stories of Israelis that accidentally wandered into Arab towns ended in very brutal and horrific massacres multiple times.
And the other thing I should mention here is this very scary for me, because when I saw the car, this is our friends at the Aliyah Return Center in Galilee that had made a wrong turn. So literally they have Aliyah Return Center logos on the car, and we give a shout out to them. They're doing great work in helping Jews bring Jewish people back from all nations around the world. They're trying to help them get settled here. Now, this logo is on the side of their car, and they're also on the side of their car. It says Zionism, Aliyah, and strengthen the society of Israel. That's branded on the side of this car as they're driving through Arab Hebron. I'm telling you, this is hostile. You look at the videos, there's guys with masks. They're at the scene. Pretty sketchy situation. So thank God our friends there at the Aliyah Return Center are safe and sound and back to good work up in the Galilee.
So we got another story that's kind of the flip side of this. And at first you might think, oh, it also happens in the Jewish towns. But there's a twist to the story when an Arab car wandered into a Jewish town on Yom Kippur and ended up getting mobbed and flipped. We'll get to that in just a second. But first we got to tell you about today's sponsor. A VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and it makes all of your internet traffic travel through a secure and encrypted tunnel. Keeps you safe from spying, Wi-Fi dangers, hides your IP address if you'd like it to, and your online activities. You can set your device to actually use a virtual location if you need to. It sounds really complicated, but a VPN basically protects you when you're on the internet. If you protect yourself while you're at your house, if you lock your doors, if you have a fence around your yard, it's the same type of thing except for the digital internet world. It can protect your passwords, bank account information. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a massive discount. You can get a 3-year subscription for $1.99 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Just use our link in the description below. It's a really good idea to have a security system in place whenever you're on the internet. It's basically the digital version of having a security system at your house. You might think it's complicated to get, but installing and getting Atlas VPN is really easy. It only takes a few minutes and just a few steps to download, install, and start using the service. You can use it on your computer, your phone, whatever device you have. Don't forget, they're running a massive discount. Right now, use our unique link in the description below to get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month and protect yourself whenever you are on the internet. So during Yom Kippur, so we just told you a story about before and right after Yom Kippur. In the middle of Yom Kippur, a few hours after it had started on Tuesday night, a vehicle from Israel's south, an Arab-Israeli vehicle, Arab-Israeli citizens from Israel's south with 5 Arab men, I think from what I understood, drove into Bat Yam, which is kind of a suburb of Tel Aviv. Bat Yam is right on the coast, and it's kind of known as an Orthodox Jewish, very religious community. And the car ended up getting mobbed and flipped on its side, and then a couple of the guys ended up getting beat up. Several of the other ones ran away, and several people ended up in the hospital. Now, what's going on here? Is this just anti-Arab aggression from the Jewish community, or does this have something more going on here? Because Bat Yam is an Orthodox community, and like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. So much so that no one actually drives on Yom Kippur. Some of the roads in Israel, like the highways, they're not actually 100% closed, but hardly anyone drives. And if you're inside a religious community, it's actually, you do not drive at all. So much so that in most of the towns, you can go out walking in the middle of the streets. I even saw a picture of someone doing a handstand in the middle of a highway, like one of Israel's busiest highways, in the middle of the day in Yom Kippur, because no one is actually driving. And if you're in a religious community, it is very much forbidden to drive at all. Israel's skies are even closed for like 27 hours. The only day of the year, completely closed. So this is a very holy time. So when someone drives into an Orthodox religious community in the middle of Yom Kippur, it's very upsetting to the religious community. Should it have happened? No, it shouldn't have. Like, they shouldn't have been mobbed, beat up, car flipped over. But it was basically they think these guys drove in just to interfere with the holiest day of the year in Judaism and to get them very, very angry.
Luke, what I want to say is that most of the world is flipping this into a total different story. We had the incidents of Jews ended up in Arab villages and the riots that surrounded their cars, and we have the fearful faces of those Jewish families and people that were in these Arab villages. And then we have, now the media is trying to say, well, in Jewish towns it's the same way. I'm sorry, but you will not find an Arab entering a Jewish town to have this kind of fear in their hearts. Arabs are not afraid to go into anywhere in Israel. Israel is a safe place for Arabs. Even if they illegally cross into areas they should not be in, they're not going to be killed unless they're terrorists. That's a whole different situation. But this is what's going on here with the flipping the car. That is not, it wouldn't matter who's in the car. Somebody driving a car into an ultra-religious area, they're going to go, it's irate at the car. Okay, but all the other media networks are going to try to paint this picture. I guarantee you, I'm already seeing it online, that the Jews are just as bad as the Arabs. They're going to be attacking Arabs, and the Arabs are attacking Jews, and it's double-sided. This is just the way it goes. Absolutely not. It's the holiest day of the year in an ultra-Orthodox town, and they see a car coming in. They're like irate that there's a car there. Of course, I'm not saying that's a good thing to do, but they're irate at the car. They're not irate at every Arab that could come into the area, and they're not targeting Arabs. If a Jewish person drove in, they would also be harassed horrendously. The same token, because they're driving on Yom Kippur. Now, don't let any news networks fool you that all the Jews are just hating the Arabs, and if the Arab makes a wrong turn into a Jewish neighborhood, this is what the news is going to try to tell you. Arab makes a wrong turn into a Jewish neighborhood, they're also going to attack them. No, absolutely not. That does not happen. This is because of Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. No cars are driving. Once again, get this straight, because all the other media you're going to hear about this is going to be anti-Israel and trying to paint a picture.
And Josh, I think the key to the end of the story is that already at least 10 people have been charged in the incident. It's a criminal incident.
Yeah.
You go flip a car, beat people up. It's a criminal incident. The police are going to come indict you, and you're going to go to jail. And that's exactly what happened in this story. I don't think you see people getting indicted and arrested for beating up Israeli Jews that wandered into an Arab town.
No.
As we wrap up here, we got to wrap up the show, but a farm in the Jordan Valley was destroyed by Arab arson terrorists in the middle of Yom Kippur, 1:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning, the morning of Yom Kippur. 2 Arabs set fire to the Dor family's farm in the Moshav Meholah in the Jordan Valley. So the building that housed the family's produce and organic herbs that they were planning on selling right after Yom Kippur at the market went up in flames, and months of their lives' work were completely ruined. If you look on security cameras, 2 masked men were seen setting the building on fire. And an army tracker from the IDF actually followed the tracks to the Arab village of Ain El Bida. But guess what? Probably not much is going to happen to take care of that situation. So, unfortunately, another act of arson terrorism that happened during Yom Kippur. So, in conclusion, guys, contrary to popular belief, the only apartheid in Israel where Jews are prohibited from entering, or where Jews are prohibited from entering a lot of towns and areas and villages in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, what the world calls occupied, or the West Bank, is actually, there's so many places where a Jew can't go in there. And when they do accidentally go in those areas, or maybe they don't do it on accident, they have to fear for their lives. If you go to Joseph's tomb, without a military escort, you have to fear for your lives. Arabs, however, they're not restricted from entering any areas of Judea and Samaria, except for maybe a Jewish gated community. But even those places, Arabs enter 90%, 95% of them on a daily basis for work, because they're the workers and they're provided with jobs that pay them 10 times more than any job they could work under the Palestinian Authority in Palestinian Arab areas. Guys, let us know what you think down in the comments below. Do you think there's apartheid in Israel? And if so, which side is it on? Drop that down in the comments. Don't forget to protect yourself while you're on the internet by signing up for Atlas VPN. Special deal going on right now. Use our unique link in the description below. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our content. Remember to tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We're here every single week with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.